Imagine a city with no men. You walk through the streets, you see grandmothers, you see widows, you see starving children, but you do not see a single man between the age of 15 and 50. This isn't a sci-fi movie. This was Paraguay in 1870. The American Civil War killed 2% of the population. World War II killed 3%. But in the 1860s, a war in South America was so total, so apocalyptic, that it wiped out 90% of the male population of an entire country. They didn't just lose an army, they lost their genetics. It was a war where children painted beards on their faces to die like men. A war where a dictator refused to surrender until he was the last soul standing in a swamp of corpses. This is the story of the War of the Triple Alliance, the suicide of a nation. To understand why a country would commit suicide, you have to meet the man holding the gun, Francisco Solano López. In 1860, Paraguay was an oddity. It was locked in the heart of the continent, isolated and strange, but it was modern. It had the first telegraphs, the first railroads, and no foreign debt. It was a fortress, and López was its king. López had spent time in Paris. He fell in love with the French Empire. He became obsessed with Napoleon Bonaparte. He ordered uniforms for his army modeled on the French Grande Armée. He hired European engineers to build him a war machine. He believed he was the Napoleon of the West. By his side was Elisa Lynch, an Irish mistress whom the locals called the Queen of Paraguay. She fed his ego. She told him he was destined for greatness. Together, they looked at the map of South America and saw an empire waiting to be taken. But López made a fatal miscalculation. He thought he was a genius. His neighbors just thought he was a threat. López made the worst gamble in military history. He didn't just pick a fight. He picked fights with everyone. When Brazil invaded neighboring Uruguay, López saw his chance. He seized a Brazilian steamship and threw the governor in prison. He declared war on the Brazilian Empire. Then, he demanded that his army march through Argentina to reach the fight. Argentina said no, so López declared war on Argentina too. In a matter of months, López had managed to unite his two massive rivals against him. Brazil, Argentina, and the new puppet government of Uruguay signed a secret treaty, the Triple Alliance. They vowed not to stop fighting until López was gone. It was David versus 3 Goliaths, and David was out of stones. May 24th, 1866, the Battle of Tuyutí. It remains the bloodiest day in South American history. López ordered a surprise attack on the Allied camp. 24,000 Paraguayans charged through the swamps against superior Brazilian artillery. It wasn't a battle, it was a slaughter. The Paraguayans were brave, fanatically brave. They charged directly into grape-shot cannons, wave after wave, stepping over the bodies of their brothers. By sunset, 13,000 men were dead or wounded. The swamp water turned red. The Allies were horrified by what they saw. The Paraguayan soldiers wouldn't surrender. Even when gutted by bayonets, they tried to bite the legs of their enemies. But bullets weren't the biggest killer. The battlefield was a hot, humid swamp. Cholera broke out. Men started dying by the thousands, vomiting themselves to death in the mud. The war turned into a stalemate of rot and disease. But López refused to quit. As the Allies pushed into Paraguay, the war changed. It stopped being a military conflict and became a national cult. López issued a decree: surrender is treason. The penalty is death. He executed his own generals for losing battles. He executed his own brothers for suggesting peace. He had his own mother flogged. He told the people that the Allies wanted to enslave them all, and the people believed him, or they were too terrified to disobey. Paraguay ran out of men, so the women picked up the rifles, then the elderly. They melted down church bells to make cannons. They made uniforms out of carpets. They fought for every inch of dirt. In one desperate attack, Paraguayans in wooden canoes tried to board massive Brazilian ironclad warships. They attacked the steel armor with machetes. It was suicide, but they kept coming. By 1869, the capital, Asunción, had fallen. López was running through the jungle, chased by the Brazilian army. He had no soldiers left, so he drafted the children. August 16th, 1869, the Battle of Acosta Ñu. This is the darkest moment in the history of the Americas. 3,500 Paraguayans stood to face 20,000 veteran Brazilian troops. But they weren't men, they were boys, aged 9 to 15. Lopez ordered them to paint soot on their faces to simulate beards, hoping to fool the enemy from a distance. They wore oversized uniforms taken from the dead. Some carried sticks because there were no guns left. When the Brazilian cavalry charged, they didn't realize who they were fighting until they were too close to stop. The slaughter was absolute. The children's mothers were hiding in the tall grass nearby, watching. When the firing started, the women ran onto the field to protect their sons, and they were cut down too. The Brazilian commander, disgusted by the massacre, ordered the grass set on fire to hide the evidence. The wounded children burned where they fell. It ended at a place called Cerro Cora. Lopez was cornered. He had a handful of starving followers left. The Brazilian cavalry surrounded him. They demanded his surrender. He shouted, "I die! With my country!" Not for his country, with it. He believed that if he died, Paraguay should die too. A soldier shot him in the chest. He fell into the mud of the Aquitaban River. The Napoleon of the West was dead. The war was over. But looking around, there was no one left to celebrate. The statistics are hard to believe. Before the war, Paraguay had a population of roughly 500,000. After the battle, 200,000 remained. Of those survivors, only 28,000 were adult men. Paraguay became a nation of women. For decades, the country had to legalize polygamy just to repopulate. The church looked the other way as men took 3, 4, 5 wives. It took 100 years for the population to recover. Today in the fields of Acosta Ñu, they say the wind still sounds like children crying, a haunting reminder of the war that killed a nation, just to feed one man's ego.